Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very first episode of Everybody's a Comedian, where we delve into the mind of a comedian or whatever's left of it by the end of the night. I'm your host, Keith Graber, and with me as my guests are a couple of my favorite comedians and brother and sister, Ed and Kate Roesgen. Guys, I'm sorry, forgive me. I don't know which one's which. Oh, it says Ed Roesgen on yours, Ed.
Yeah,
Ed, say
that's
hi to the people at home for me.
hi to the people at home, but bum.
They're not at home. They might be in their car. I don't know. And Kate Roesgen, take a bow. Very
Do
colorful.
I need to do that audibly somehow?
An audible bow.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna curtsy then.
Make
if
a
I can.
make a bow pun like Ed would. I don't know. You're right.
I've been on the podcast 4 seconds. I feel personally attacked.
That's stealing. That's stealing. Yeah, you're right. That we won't do that.
I mean, you're a straight white male. Aren't you always personally attacked?
Yeah, pretty much. This is America, isn't it?
Okay, shots already fired here, guys. I am 88% straight and white. Hold on. That's not how I meant to. Okay. Guys, we'll get right into it. So let's learn a little bit about yourselves and how you each got into comedy. Kate, ladies first.
Sure. I mean, it's also chronological order.
Yeah.
Not by age. Make that as clear as I possibly can. I am the younger of the siblings. No, I started. I moved out to California when I was 18, as soon as I possibly could. We're from Pennsylvania. And I didn't do stand-up at first. I just came out here to go to college and then didn't want to go back. And it took a while. I grew up with Ed being the oldest sibling, and he was the comedian of the family. Everybody always thought he was the comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with me being the oldest sibling too.
Yeah. But everybody just thought, oh, Ed's going to be a comedian one day. He'll do stand-up. And stand-up was really big in our house. We just grew up in one of those houses that really listened to and respected and watched stand-up all the time. And so I was out in California for a few years and realized that, like, oh, maybe I should start first. Like, he hasn't yet, and I kind of want to, and I'm here. So I started doing a couple open mics and liked the process, but hated the open mics, like hated the LA open mic scene in general. So I did it really sparingly at first. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering because I'm curious. So was it LA, the LA experience that inspired you to start actually pursuing comedy, or was it a lack of access to it where you were in Pennsylvania?
I mean, there was definitely a lack of access to it in Pennsylvania. I always thought that I needed to go to like a larger city in order to pursue it, but it was something that I always liked since I was a kid. I remember thinking, like I said, we just grew up in a house that really respected stand-up. I just remember thinking as a kid that would be like something I've always wanted to try, but I would just never thought that I would, because I never thought that I would like get the balls to actually go up on it. Just looked so terrifying. Like it looked like something I really wanted to do, but that I would never actually be able to or muster the courage for. And as an adult living in a big city where I could have tried, it just kind of became one of those things where year after year would pass by, and I just started thinking, like, I'm eventually gonna like wake up one day and be an old woman and never have tried this. And that thought became so much more terrifying to me than actually going up and trying it, because I just kind of like thought about my life as a whole and thought, okay, so I could take 5 minutes of my entire life and go through this agonizing, terrifying thing that I've been terrified to try my entire life. And it could just be 5 minutes and then it would be gone. And then like, maybe I would feel really bad that night or something, but that would be it. Or I could spend my entire life being too scared to try it and then realize that it was too late. Of course, now I see that like there are people at every age that start stand-up, but to me, the thought of just being too scared to try it became more terrifying than.
Yeah. So you're driven by FOMO, basically.
Yes. Or that was even a thing. That's what
Mm-hmm.
That's what terrified me most.
We finally got a word for it. is what happened.
Yeah.
Um, and you were talking about the LA comedy scene being a little bit of
A dumpster fire.
oh, I was going to say disappointment, but yeah, you're right. That's probably a more accurate D word for it. I felt the same way, and I think it probably, if it weren't for the quarantine, I would say it's still there. I think we have a huge chance to hit the reset button. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's go to you, Ed, and tell us a little bit how you got into comedy.
Well, actually, I got into it because she was into it. My sister moved out here when she turned 18, but I didn't move to Los Angeles until I was almost 40.
Mhm.
So I had never gotten a chance to see her perform. How long had you been doing it when I got here?
So the thing was that I did it off and on because I just hated the open mics, that I like never did them. And I traveled for a couple years and got to do open mics in other cities and realized that it wasn't as painful and terrible. And so when I came back, I think it was in 2013, no, 2012, 2011, something like that. I moved to Pasadena when I came back to LA after traveling. And that's when I found the Ice House had a second show that you could audition for. And all you had to do to audition was to prepare 5 minutes and show up at this time on this day, and you got to audition. And if you were any good, you would supposedly be put on this like show on the second stage that this guy Dave McNary used to run.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I got put on a show, and it was a real show, and I could actually have people come and pay money that I got a portion of, and they could sit in an audience and watch it wasn't just an open mic that happened at 5 p.m. that was no audience and just other comics. It was like an actual thing that I got to do, and it was really exciting. And so when my brother moved out, I actually got to like invite him to a real comedy show, which was
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you, because Dave McNary just recently passed away, and my God, it was like every other post on my Facebook was people telling stories and long stuff. Like you had to click to read the story
Mhm.
of just their experience with this guy who ran this show, and he gave so many people like their first chance to like get up on an actual stage and tell jokes in front of an audience, like she's saying, at a real comedy club, um, on the second stage on Sunday nights at like 8 p.m. And he
Mhm.
did it consistently forever and just gave a lot of people their break. So I got to move out here, and I was living in Pasadena at the time as well. So I went to see my sister perform stand up. And when I got there, this guy, little old guy, was standing there, um, talking to everybody that was coming in with their tickets and stuff like that. And it's this guy Dave, and she's like, Dave, this is my brother. And he's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, and like comp me in. He's like, don't worry about paying, go see your sister. And I got out of the show, and I'm walking out, and he's out there, and I talked to him, and I said, thank you so much, that was amazing to get to see my sister actually perform comedy. And instead of saying, oh, you're very welcome, he looked at me and said, she always told me that you were the funny one in the family.
Hmm.
And he kind of smirked, and I was like, well, you'll probably see me. I went back and auditioned the next month, because the auditions were monthly, and he was not there that day. He was off covering something for Variety magazine where he worked. So he had another comedian there running the audition. And it was the first time I ever got up on a stage, and I just remember being blinded by the lights and doing terribly. Um, and getting done and being like, I'm going to go back and do this again. And went back the next month, with actual, like what proto jokes, I guess you could say, like
Mhm.
you write your first time you go up,
I'm familiar.
but
Yep.
with promise. And those were the kind of people that he booked. He booked people where he saw, like, you got it, you just don't have it yet, but you got it up here, like you figured it out, you know what you're supposed to be doing. And he would book people. A friend of mine was saying, just the other night we were talking, and you were there, Keith, when AT was saying when he booked you, he would say, you need to work on this and this, but come back and do the show in 3 months. I'll book you now. And, you
Mhm.
know, just like on that good faith that you were going to get better, that, you know, this was something that you wanted to do
Yeah,
because
that's
he had a
interesting.
passion for it.
That's interesting that he also engaged in sort of recruitment and coaching as well as running that show. You
He
don't see a
just is,
lot of that from producers.
and
Uh,
that's why people, you know, have so many great stories about the guy. And
yeah,
yeah,
I heard a lot about him, and I'm kind of upset I missed the boat. And I did when I started out early. I did go and do the Ice House, but I did it with another producer, and it was an all right show. But you know, it like I could have used that bump, you know. Um, but I did do some of the other bringer shows at the Comedy Store that Vargas Mason. I'm sure you guys have been to the Comedy Store. I don't know if you've done it, Kate. Um,
I haven't performed there. I've gone and seen
Vargas'
Ed
show.
there.
Yeah.
yeah, she's seen me on Vargas's show, These Nuts.
But
I think I've been
that's
on there
another guy that's
4 or
like
5
really
times.
supportive of new comics, and you know we all know the bringer show sort of dynamic and economics and how people look down at that. But when you're starting out, like it's just super necessary. It's like you have to do it that way, you know. You have to grind for a little bit. All right, guys. Another question. I've seen a little bit of this, but maybe let's get into it and see how you really feel. Are you guys competitive of one another? And if so, does comedy exacerbate that? Have you noticed that? Is there any sort of one-upsmanship that's that you engage in?
I just want to make this very clear. I'm only being competitive when I'm winning. So no, there's no. I
Yeah, if he's
don't
losing, he
think
doesn't
so.
care.
Do you?
No, he was trying.
No, we don't. No,
No,
it doesn't
I
matter
mean,
who's funnier.
there's first off, there's such an age gap, and then also the fact that we're like different genders. Growing up, there wasn't anything that we were both vying for ever. You know, he's 11 years older than me. He wasn't 16 trying to get the same thing I was at 5. You know, like there wasn't really a lot of competition when we were kids. Like I was the cute one, and there was nothing he could do about that. So
Yeah, they had already given up on me by the time she came around.
yeah. there's a brother in between us that maybe you were a little more competitive with. I don't know, before I was born, but I just changed the game, you know. So
Yeah.
I think as far as comedy, we want different things. Overall, I feel like I'm more drawn to, like, I just want to write and be a writer. He enjoys performing more, so we're using the same vehicle to get to different spots. So I don't think that there's like a competition.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's no direct competition. I don't think we're not going for the same, even the same laughs if we're in the same room. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the styles are very different,
I've noticed
not just based on what she said about the fact that we are, you know, like over a decade different in age, different genders, everything. It's also different, like we have very different approaches to stand up. So
Yeah, I mean, we also, that comes from our background. Like we grew up on different comedians too. You know, like we were drawn to different styles of different comics because you were born at a time when, you know, Richard Pryor and George Carlin, and I was more like, you know, maybe the younger versions of those, like the Jon Stewarts and Stephen Colbert's and stuff like that.
Chappelle.
yeah, it was very different. She grew up in a house where Comedy Central was on the cable box since she was a kid. I grew up where it was like you had um, a copy of, or you tuned into HBO to watch the latest whatever.
Hmm. I
Uh,
remember. Yeah.
so at the house, you know, we were watching like Bill Cosby, and then over at my buddy's house in the basement, we were watching Eddie Murphy.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like it was everywhere. But you know, even in our household, like she said, we watched a lot. Even when it was, you know, like my dad had the old Bill Cosby himself special, I probably watched 200 times.
I
Yeah,
remember that.
Um,
Yeah. Chocolate cake, man. Yeah.
that was like, yeah, Comedy Central came to our cable provider about when I was like 11 or 12 or something like that. But yeah, before that, I remember having all those things memorized. And then things would come onto Comedy Central, but they didn't have like a ton of content. So those would eventually repeat. And then I memorized all these new comics. And like, it was just like I never stopped trying to intake comedy.
And so my follow-up question was, how exactly do your comedic styles differ? And I notice, you know, obviously I work with you guys a lot and I see a little bit of that. But in your own words, how would you describe your comedic style? Let's start with you, Kate.
I don't know. I'm definitely more political, I think, than Ed with my comedy. I guess he does more of like short, kind of quick jokes, than I more go into like not so much a story, but like a theme. And then I try to do different takes off of that theme. And that's the part of writing that I like, is trying to make it like flow and mix together and take two subjects that don't seem to want to go together, but put them together.
Yeah, I noticed that with your comedy, Kate, there's a little bit of like, there's almost like a journalistic integrity to it. You know, so I don't mean as a slam. Every time
he
like,
doesn't mean
I'll take it.
comedic. He means journalistic.
No,
there's no comedic.
It is comedic. Like there's it's never without the punchlines, but like you almost like you want to say right on as much as you're laughing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's growing up on the Daily Show.
It's always valid.
I go the other way. I play up the fact that the you know, the characterization of my comedy is like, this is the guy that you don't want. You want to be like, oh no,
you don't want
like right on. It's like
I'm the Daily Show and you're the Colbert Report.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a little bit more to it.
That's a little more accurate.
Okay, so the folks at home probably don't know how much the three of us work together, but the next question I have for you is, do you collaborate well? And you know, obviously we do. We do shows together. We produce a lot of things together. But in terms of like your one-on-one, is there ever any sort of interest in direct collaboration with each other in comedy?
You mean like with jokes or with like projects, or
in any way, sketch, writing, jokes, performance? I mean, well, let's start here. Before the lockdown, have you guys ever done like a show together on the same show?
Yeah, we did. We did one of Dave's shows together. We're both born in October, so we did an October show, kind of like right in between our birthdays. That we both kind of, did together.
And have either of you ever, before Liar Comedy, have either of you ever thought like, hey, we should put our heads together and do this, do XYZ, whatever?
No.
Not really, because that never really seemed like attainable before. Like, what are we gonna do? Two nobodies in the LA comedy scene are gonna take it by storm.
Now we're LA's go-to nobodies in the comedy scene.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the biggest nobodies around. I don't know if you heard.
All it took was a global pandemic, and here I am, crushing.
We did it.
And it's easy to capitalize on pandemics. That's
if Bezos can do it, we can do it.
Right. Bezos is making a little bit more than us. I mean, I'm not going to say no to the $30 on Venmo, but
he started out selling books. I started out trying to get booked. It's all one big circle of life.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. So, how would you guys handle it if the other one was successful?
I don't think we're ever gonna have to worry about that, are we?
with an extended hand waiting for money.
Yeah.
You remember how I got you that first gig? Remember how I lied to Dave McNary for you?
I mean,
Dave was all like, now where are you gonna store all the caviar? Like, come on. No, I don't know. I mean, okay, how many? I guess we'd have to hit up Patton and Matt and find out how they, because I don't know. That doesn't seem like such a bad deal for the one, you know. Matt Oswald seems to have a good life.
I feel like Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I was just gonna say, I feel like with comedy, like if you're successful, it's very easy to like get somebody a job doing something. Like
Mhm.
there's not a lot that you are just solo and you never need like another writer or another. So it just seems like, oh, that'd be great because then
Yeah, I feel like Kate would
bootstraps
live over
and
your head
coattails are
forever. Yeah,
No.
she would never
same.
let you live it down. If Kate was making millions and doing like Netflix specials, I feel like that would be the topic at every Thanksgiving. Am I wrong, Ed?
We don't have Thanksgiving together. She's vegan, so it's no
There you
point.
go.
Yeah.
It's problem solved. I love that you guys are problem solvers. That's and
Right.
There's very little friction in the dynamic.
yeah,
It's pretty easy going.
you're kind of hedging your bets in a way, like you do this kind of comedy, I'll do this kind of comedy. If anything sticks to the wall,
Hmm.
Yep.
we
We'll be the
got
two siblings that don't work together, don't collaborate, don't have a. Yeah. You do your set, I'll do my set.
I
Pass each other in the hallway. I don't know
That's
you.
our gimmick. That's our fun gimmick. We're not identical twins or two members of triplets, although we do have another brother. We're all born at different times with different faces. It's crazy.
and okay, so I'll get to the other brother, but I just want to say that it's like the subtext, the background theory behind liar comedy is like coattails and I got Velcro gloves. Like whoever, if anyone hits, like we're all making it big. You know what I mean? Like that's like the game we're all playing in the
Should make everybody like take the Adam Sandler oath or whatever. Like if one of us makes it, we just bring every movie, everything. It's just the same people that you don't see in any other project.
yeah.
I have to imagine now there's a certain loyalty, I'm sure, that extends just because of the fact that, like, you have to find people you want to work with. And I think that it's like a lot of comedians are like, why do I want to, you know, like I know I've known these people since I started. Just bring them along. I know I can stand them. Like I think that like
That's kind of
because Farley didn't get pissed off at David Spade, and David Spade let him, just chill. Like that was like good enough for him. It's like, okay, you can be in all my movies.
yeah. And that's kind of as high as the bar gets. I can stand them.
Yeah. No, you're fun to hang out with. You're funny and you're fun to hang out with. That's all
Yeah.
it takes.
You haven't
Why
pissed
take a
me off.
chance on somebody that's funny and is probably not that much fun to hang out with?
Yeah, and it's a jealous industry. Like that's something I've noticed that in the beginning that I didn't love, and that's something that I think that we've sort of stepped around creating the culture that we did with liar comedy. It's like it's shouldn't be about sort of this jealousy or competitiveness or excessive competitiveness, um, and any kind of like hate. It's more like we're all working for the same goal, and the world doesn't want just one comedian. The world wants a whole variety pack of comedians, and
Right. Well, and I think that that's the difference. That's the thing that makes it different than like I was saying before, you can like hire your friends. With musicians, it's like, well, how many guitar players do you really need? You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
there's so much variety in what each one, like we're all just so different. We're somehow all playing the same instrument, but it's all just each one of us is so uniquely different that it's really easy to just be like, oh, well, you should also check out my friend. You should also like, they're also really funny and good, and we could be on the same thing together. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that a lot of that jealousy and whatever you're talking about, that's just like ego and self doubt at
Mhm.
play, which is, I mean, if we're being honest, for people that do stand up comedy, like those are your two prime functions that are going on in your brain is I want to get up there for my ego because I think I'm funny, because I know I'm funny, and I want other people to know how funny I am, and I get up there for my laughs. And then there's that self doubt that, when you see somebody else kill it, and like that part of you that's like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, or
Mhm.
maybe, and then that's so you gotta like figure out a way to, be comfortable with what you're doing. And if you're not, then, that's where the work is. That's what you do. You
Yeah.
want to get to the point where you can see somebody else kill it and be like, that dude was hilarious, good for him. Doesn't affect what I do, and it doesn't take me down any because I'm comfortable with what I do, you know? Like,
Absolutely.
not every guitar player is going to be Hendrix.
Yeah.
It's just the fact of it. Doesn't mean people should not play guitar.
Yeah, and you should be comfortable with the fact that you're John Mayer and you're not Hendrix, because there's a
Yeah.
space for John Mayer in this world, and people
There's a space for everybody. There's
still
enough,
buying those albums.
like, there's it's not like there's a line of comedians with killer material waiting outside of comedy clubs, like chicks trying to get into the actual club, and they're like, okay, you, and you, come on in. The rest of you go, f off. It's there's enough for everybody. If the world needs content now more than ever,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
distractions that'll always be there.
is it odd though that this art form, as opposed to a lot of other ones, is well, I mean, I don't know precisely, like, but it's just such an emotional roller coaster. Like, I imagine like writing poems isn't really as emotional as what you go through, every day as a
As writing
comedian. Like,
jokes.
you wake up one day and you're like, I'm the worst ever. I'm so bad, and then the next day you're like, this is awesome. And it's the dumbest thing. They liked my tweet. It's such an emotional roller coaster.
I think that's
Yeah, so
anything in entertainment, though. Like, you're just at the behest of an audience, and social media has just made that, like, oh, not just on stage now, every single moment of your life you could have a potential audience of millions of people, and so why aren't you out there trying to reach them at every single week? Like, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah, you can go down a rabbit hole mentally with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to the one brother that you have. So for we won't name him, but we'll call him the unfunny brother. I guess that's the that's the unfunny sibling at this point. So what did he miss the funny gene, or what do you think happened? Like, how does it work?
No, he's probably, honestly, he's the funniest one. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, I'll give that to my brother.
He's just too smart to go into comedy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He wants to make money for a living.
He has like a normal life, and he's got a wife and a kid and a house with a picket fence, and getting his doctorate and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the one that applied himself and succeeded.
He's the middle kid. They're always weird.
Yeah. My family has a weird dynamic too. So I'm the oldest, and my middle brother is sort of the most reliable one. He's the one that has the job and the house and the the business. And my youngest brother is the Charlie. I don't know if It's Always Sunny. He does the Charlie work. He's the Charlie in the group. And then I have a half brother and a step brother and a sister. And I mean, I won't get into details, but it doesn't play out the way you expect all the time. The oldest brother isn't necessarily like the leader of the group, and it kind of trails down. And I guess I'm getting that just with your family, where it's like your middle brother's like, I'm smarter than all of you because I'm not doing comedy.
Like in any other family, Ed or I would be the weird sibling, but because we somehow ended up in the same family, and we now outnumber the normal one is the weird one of the family.
Yeah. Fun. So another question I have is, are you guys protective of one another in the way that siblings sometimes are? Okay, I'll take that as a no. That's a solid no. That's fine.
To a degree, but not. I mean, my sister can live her life or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if somebody hits me up and says, "Hey, do you think this would be a good idea?" I'd be like, I think I can safely say, "Yeah, I wouldn't bother."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This isn't about anyone in particular.
I guess I don't have like an example of like I don't know,
I,
someone
I
trying to
can't think
mess
of a
with
time where I've
Ed or
ever
something.
had.
I just,
No, that's never come up with me either. Really,
he's just the funny guy at the bar, and now he's just the funny guy.
I gotta protect the general public from her more than I gotta protect her from the general public.
So
If I'm
like,
Yeah,
being
kind of.
honest,
so
I feel bad for the people around you.
Fuckers.
Exactly.
you're like the world's bouncer for her. So if there was, so for instance, Ed, if there was a heckler that, you know, was really giving it to Kate on a set, I mean, would you feel like, you know, like a need to say anything, or
Wait a minute. Am I going up after her? You got to flesh out this scenario, Pete.
Do I
If
get
we're
to
in the same show
you create
and
the
I'm going
scenario?
up
Yeah.
after my sister got heckled and that guy is still in the audience?
He's still there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got to address that.
I would probably just say to the heckler, you have no idea how stupid what you are doing is, because the next guy, yikes.
I wouldn't care if I was 6 comedians later. I'd be like, where's the piece of shit that was calling out my sister?
Because and we have done a number of roasts together, and I feel like you guys have severely enjoyed roasting each other. You know, like, is there ever something where you're like, I got to get this off my chest, or you just keep it superficial?
I mean, I
No,
don't think
I
so. I
mean-
think that's all in good fun.
Yeah. If anybody that was just how it was in my house. My grandma, I used to roast my grandmother on the daily, like 3 times a day, and she would crack up laughing.
Yep.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah. Okay. So your grandmother, was it Alzheimer's that she had?
Eventually,
Sorry, I'm not trying to dig. I don't know if that's.
No, it was the situation was this.
Blonde
God
hair.
rest her soul. Yeah, she started off ditzy
Mm-hmm.
on her best day to be polite,
Mm-hmm.
and then continued to age throughout the decades, so that like she didn't like Alzheimer's didn't hit her. It just kind of like gradually slid. It was like 2 tectonic plates like sliding.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just kind of like snuck
Just
in.
replaced
Didn't Dad used to
whatever
call it
was there.
sometimers?
Sometimers. And then
Yeah.
so you would roast her, but Kate wouldn't, because I guess she was too young.
Yeah, I mean, I was a child, you know, this is teenage Ed, and I'm like 6 years old sitting at the table just laughing along because everyone's laughing, so it must be funny.
And so were you always the sweet one, Kate? Like, where you weren't sarcastic at home?
Not as a 6-year-old, but like probably in my teenage years, you like develop that sarcasm hormone or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, eventually, but not, you know, not as a little kid running around in dresses and having people want to take videos of me and put on little dance shows. And I was just the cute little kid because I was the only girl and the baby, so it was like the worst. I was the most spoiled little thing.
Yeah,
great.
I know that dynamic very well. I have an aunt that is in that scenario. So it's like there's like a little princess syndrome.
Yeah.
The way that you're treated and sort of the way that you're disciplined.
Ed's facial expression. He probably knows better than I am, better than I do, because I was a kid at the time. So you know.
You just thought
I
it
was
normal.
fine. It was like I had this shiny little kid to throw out so I could go do other stuff. I was like,
Yep.
take a look at this. And I'd be off in the woods camping, drinking beer.
It's like a distraction.
Yeah.
Hey, look, she's dancing. It's cute. It's adorable. And then you sneak out the back to smoke weed.
Or just like teach me a curse word, and then that's the whole night for them. Like, we gotta deprogram this.
All right. Here's a fun question that feel free to like dig down into your soul here and be honest. Is there any quality that the other has that you are envious of? And I will not take a no from either of you. Ed, I'm gonna start with you.
I'm just gonna assume like I should go first because she has the longer answer. Because you were talking about. I
Give me
think
longer
that
to think of something, please.
the
Thanks.
one thing, and it is comedy related, that I always said was how irritated I got that my sister can just like she'll have a show that night at 8 o'clock and it'll be 10 in the morning and she'll be sitting there with a crayon, a literal crayon, writing her like these are my jokes for tonight and just like come up with it on the spot. Whereas I myself have to like it takes me a long time to
Mhm.
come up with enough jokes to make, like the way that I work is different. So that I can't just like whip it off the top of my head that morning and get like she'll get tons of laughs with stuff that like, she worked up in 20 minutes where it takes me like, 3 weeks to get that much material and that's going and bombing with it at mics and working on it. So
Mhm.
that I'm jealous of.
Yeah, I think this.
Well, that's interesting. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's interesting because my answer was how quickly you come up with one-line puns,
Hmm.
like off the top of your head in situations and stuff.
Yeah.
So I
I
guess
mean,
that's the difference is that like that goes back to our styles where you just go to like the quick hits that are just like one sentence or something. So it takes you a lot longer to write a set of that. Whereas my sets I can just write because it's mostly me like explaining something. So it takes longer.
well, I got that from dad. That's how he used to joke. Like he would be the guy that would sit back and be quiet until he had that one zinger that he would throw out that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Except I decided to fill the silence with just my own babbling, so it doesn't work quite as effectively. Like I wish I had the reservation of words that he had. Um, because everything that came out of his mouth was funny, but it was only, like he'd mostly just be sitting back listening to everybody else.
Hmm.
Whereas I talk the entire time until I stumble upon those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have a stand-up set where you're just sitting there listening to the audience and then come in.
I think it's possible. I think I could do it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say that that's the answers that I kind of. It goes back again to like difference in comedic styles that I see in both of you, and I mean Ed, I always see that like I think you underestimate your real time ability to throw out those jokes. I mean, I think you throw out so many jokes that are tags sometimes that are better than the topic or the bit that it's on, and to you it's a throwaway, and to the rest of us we're like, whoa, I wish we could write that, and then Kate, you also like delve into the thought process of something like so deeply that like I always think like, man, if only I applied that much time to that bit to flesh it out that far, I would get to that point. You know what I'm saying? Like they're strategies that we all need to work on in comedy, but some of us kind of, I don't know, we just naturally have a we naturally are just more capable of certain things, and I'm always like a hybrid of certain things, and so there's things that I see in both of you that I see in myself, and then also I'm kind of jealous of some of those the exact things that you said.
He
um
just answered his own question.
I was gonna say, I think like a lot of like your style can also stem from like what you know you're bad at. Like for me, I'm bad at memorizing a whole set of a bunch of different things. So that's why it's always the goal. Like I want my cheat sheet to have the least amount of words on it possible. So if I'm only talking about like 3 different things
Mhm.
in a 10-minute set, all I have to do is remember those 3 things. And if I get on the subject of that one thing, I can just go and do 3 or 4 minutes on it, but then I just have to switch to like 2 more things and that's all I have to remember. So that's where like that fleshing out comes from, is like then I don't have to think about what else I meant to talk about.
Yeah, there's a natural stream of consciousness that you just have to awaken in yourself.
Do you want to know what I do? I just write it all down on a cocktail napkin. That's
uh,
it. Just write it on a cocktail napkin. Take
Wrap
the
it
drink
around your
up there.
beer. and look through the glass when you're
Set-
drinking it.
No, I
Set
do that.
time.
It's just I can't. I don't want to stop and like read a bunch of stuff on it. Like if it's just 3 bullet points, like I can see it from far away, and I don't have to make it obvious. It's like, wait, what does that say?
Telling you. We're giving out pearls of wisdom. Takes you years in the LA comedy scene to figure out. You can just write it on a cocktail napkin. So your listeners can take that one to the bank.
The bank, by the way, will not cash your check. I'm sorry. Comedy does not pay.
Or your cocktail.
Yeah, or your cocktail napkin. But no, it's totally true. And like, I don't know. I employ some of the same like tactics sometimes because when I write my set, and it's I'm sort of a hybrid again. Like, so I've got these like zingers that the zingers for me feel easier to rehearse, to remember, and to feel like them, and but you also want to like I want to delve into something a little more philosophical and deeper, and so but that sometimes you got to recreate that moment in your brain, and it just becomes a little bit tricky. There's occasions where it's like, oh, yeah, you remember the what's the Groundhog's Day when he tries to recreate the kissing scene and it just doesn't work. Like that sometimes is like comedy to me when you're just like, hey, this is funny, right? And then people are like, yo, we don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that might be like because most of the stuff that I go on tangents about are things that I'm angry about. That might just be a very female thing where you can get riled up and angry about something at the drop of a hat. You just think about it.
Mm-hmm. And I
just
don't
goes
notice.
to show how many of my ex-girlfriends were constantly thinking about me.
Yes. And I don't notice in your comedy a lot of like anger or ranting moments. Do you feel like you have that, or do you?
Yeah, I just can't. That's one of those things where it's like very hard for me to translate that naturally.
Mhm.
But if you ask anybody that knows me as, a friend that's, spent time with me, they'll tell you that that's when I'm my funniest is when something gets me angry. But I find that it's just a little difficult for me to translate it into like on stage artificially. So
Yeah.
if I'm actually upset when I go up there, I can do it. But I guess I'm not a good enough actor at this point or whatever, because it just
Mm.
comes off like me bitching about stuff if I'm not genuinely feeling it.
I would agree
So,
with that. And you're recreating that
yeah.
Groundhog Day moment. Yeah, and there's a difference between your friend enjoying your sort of one-sided conversation and an entire audience seeing that as a performance that's worthy of applause and
Well,
laughter.
they have the friend has the benefit of knowing who you are beyond that moment.
Mhm.
The friend knows that, you're normally not like that. When you go up on stage and like that's your whole act as you're ranting, then you better be that person that's always like that or that can convey that
Yeah,
feeling,
like
you
Lewis
know.
Black or something. You have to
Yeah.
establish you're a nobody to this, but you're a brand new person every time, and you have to establish that context. Um, okay, guys, we're towards the end, and so something I want to do for this very funny podcast is so. All right, this episode is about uh, the two of you and that you're siblings in comedy, and it's a sibling rivalry. But you know what? That's sort of basic. I'm gonna let you guys name your own episode, and I'm gonna put it up there, no matter what it is. Hopefully, it doesn't have a lot of ethnic slurs in there. Uh, so I don't know.
What
You
do you
guys pick.
consider a lot? And what do you consider an ethnic slur?
Just don't get me
Define
canceled. I don't
slur.
care about what's that.
Well, I mean, our last go ahead.
What's it?
What? I said define slur.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this is all semantics at this point. Yeah. So I don't know. Pitch me some ideas. What's a good title for this episode?
Could just be Roesgen and no, you're not pronouncing that correctly.
Okay, I like it so far.
It's your first episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we should call it pilot error.
You know what? I have, here's the thing. There's like a 10% chance that as soon as this goes out, there's going to be another fucking Malaysian plane that goes down and I'm going to get canceled over that. All right. Should I take that out? I don't know. Okay.
I would you'd take it out if a plane crashes.
Okay. You never know with the news these days. What's good? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I'll tell you, people make the joke that is that too soon, but if you're going to be precognitive about it, the answer is yes, it's way too soon to make that joke if it hasn't happened yet.
yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, 3 days ago, I was pissed at GameStop for, ripping me off every time I took games in. Now, like you never know. I don't know. For the folks, I guess I should put the date up for the, that's relevant for the folks at home. All right, guys, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Ed, we'll start with you.
Oh, I've got a bunch of stuff coming out. The easiest way is just to follow me and your host Keith here on Instagram at Liar Comedy. It's right there. So that's where we put out all the stuff about our shows that we do, everything that's coming up. Just follow us there. It's a universal plug. It fits all the holes. So there you go.
And
Nice.
Kate?
Just, I guess,
Ditto.
at Kate Roesgen, Instagram, Twitter, everything. It's a really unique last name, so it's me usually.
Cool. All right.
Spell it right.
For the folks at home, for those of you who don't know how to pronounce it, it's pronounced Roesgen.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's accurate.
And it's spelled Roesgenkin.
Just imagine a rose flavored gin. What would you call that?
Exactly.
Rose gin.
That should be the name of the podcast. Rose flavored gin.
Rose. The episode.
There you go.
Rose flavored gin. All right, we did it. See, guys, it's been a writer's room. It's been well, that's all it's been really. We talked some shit and we got into your minds. I hope somebody learned something from it. But this has been the first episode ever of Everybody's a Comedian. And literally everyone is, because Jesus, with Twitter and memes, like it's hard to keep up these days, but God knows we're trying. And as soon as everyone goes back to work, we can be the comedians, and then they can be, go back to being analysts, etc. But yeah, it's been a great episode. I want to thank again my guests, Kate Roesgen and Ed Roesgen. Again, that's pronounced Rose Gin, like rose flavored gin. And you guys get it. I'm Keith Graber. This has been Everybody's a Comedian. Thanks for listening.